Hey guys, welcome back. And today I've got another exciting tutorial for you. Today we are gonna go ahead and create the sun that you can see on your screen right now. In this tutorial, we're gonna go ahead and learn how we create these texture, how we go ahead and animate these fire that's going around the sun, and how we create this outer glow of the sun, right? So base and also how to animate it, right? So please hang around until the end of this video so that you can learn the complete tutorial. But yeah, why don't we get right into it? All right, so in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and click on File, New, and General. And we end up with our default cube and our camera and light. We don't need any of this, so I'm going to just hit A and delete them. I'll also let me quickly go ahead and switch on my screencast keys just so that you guys know what I'm clicking on, right? So we've got this default plane now. I'll go ahead and do a Shift A to add icosphere, and I'll add 4 subdivisions in it because I want it nice and round. And then we'll go ahead and do a right click and shade smooth. Now we've got our base for the sun, and that's all we need to do as far as modeling goes. The rest, everything else is procedural, and it's going to be created in the shading tab or in the shader editor, right? So let me quickly pull up the shader editor here. And again, you guys can simply go ahead and do it in the shading tab, but for some reason the screencast keys doesn't work over there, so I have to do it here. Okay, so in order to start with it, we're going to go ahead and click new to create a new material. And in this principal BSDF, we don't need that, so I'll delete it. And I'll go ahead and add an emission shader in this, right? So sorry, can't spell. Emission shader, and we'll take it and plug it in the surface of our object. Also, let me go to the render view so that you guys can actually see what I'm doing. I'll also go ahead and go to my render properties and just make sure I have ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections switched or clicked on, right? Just to make sure that we have some bloom in here when we actually add it. And also I'm going to increase the bloom to about 10 just to make sure we can see what I'm doing, right? So once we have that set up, now we're going to go ahead and add a color ramp and plug it in right into our emission color. And then we'll add a Voronoi texture. So what we are actually doing here is we are creating that surface of the sun, right? So we're gonna go ahead and create a Voronoi texture, and if you see it right on your screen right now, you can see a reference for the surface of the sun. So I'm gonna try and create something similar to this. Of course, it won't be exactly like that because that's probably not possible. But yes, Voronoi texture is something that comes really close to it. So I'm going to use that one, right? So once we add that, can you see this F1 here? We're going to go ahead and change it to distance to edge. And as soon as I do that, you can see that there's something similar that is coming up here, right? So that's what we were going for. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this and change it to a reddish orangish color that is of a sun. And let's increase the scale to 100 because they are obviously really small. And yeah, that's what we're going for, right? So we've got our surface texture created now you can adjust this to make sure that you like to add more darkness or lightness to your surface. So I'm just gonna move it slightly over here just to make sure that our edges are a little bit more prominent. And once we are done with that, now it's time to create those fiery explosions that were running around the sun, right? So in order to do that, we'll go ahead and add a mix shader here and plug it right between our emission shader and the material output. And then I'll also go ahead and take another emission shader and I'll add it right into the top section of the mix shader. Now it's looking really weird. Don't be alarmed. It's totally normal. We are going to go ahead and add another color ramp here and plug it into the factor of our mix shader. and then take a noise texture and take the factor of the noise texture and just plug it in right in the factor of our color ramp, right? So as soon as we do that, it's slightly giving you that effect, but it's not that prominent. So we're going to move the white closer to the black and move the black closer to the white, just so that we can get a little bit more of that effect, right? And then we'll keep the scale to 5 because I think that works fine, but we'll increase the details up to 5, or let's go 6, right? And we'll increase the roughness a little bit up to 0.6 and add a little bit of distortion, not a lot, so we'll go 0.1, right? So now we've got our fiery clouds that are generally on the sun's surface, right? So uh, once we have this ready, I'm gonna go ahead and change the color to slightly, sorry, not the color here, uh, color in the emission to slightly yellowish, right? And let's just increase the strength to about 80 because they are really bright. Um, Actually, let's go slightly orangish. Yeah, this looks perfect. Okay, so I'll also increase the strength over here to about 25, and let's make it a little bit more darker, because the more emission strength you add, the lighter your color gets, right? So and plus I don't want this amount of bloom. So for example, if I just bring down my world strength to 0, can you see the amount of bloom is way too much, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go to my render settings, click on bloom, and intensity is something that I'm going to reduce to 0.01. And yeah, that actually looks perfect. Okay, so once we have this set up, now we've got two things set up, which is the flames around it, and we've also set up we have also got the surface texture taken care of, but it still doesn't look quite right, because at the end of the day there is also a slight glow around your sun, because it's way too bright. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and create next. So I'll just bring these nodes down, and let's duplicate this mix shader and add it right between the original mix shader and the material output. And I'm going to plug it in the bottom socket of the mix shader, right? Now let's add another emission shader. Now this emission shader is actually going to work as the outer glow. And so I'm going to go ahead and increase it to about 80 again. And we will go ahead and add another color ramp here. We can take the color ramp and plug it into the factor. And the last node that we'll need, well, actually not the last one, we'll need another one after this, but we'll add a layer weight node. We'll take the facing output of the layer weight node and put it in the factor. And also we'll add another noise texture over here, right? And I'll tell you why I added this noise texture, but before that, let's work with the layer weight node. So in this color ramp, you have to click this drop down here and click on flip color ramp. And as soon as you do that, you can see the center is not glowing anymore, right? So once you bring this white color closer to the black, it automatically shifts the effect just to the edges of your object, right? So that's the beauty of the layer weight node, and that's why we use it. But right now it's just plain and a straight circle that's covering the sun, which doesn't really look real. So to add a little bit more realism to it, what we're going to do is we're going to take this noise texture, we'll take the factor of this and add it to the blend of our layer weight node, and let's just increase the scale. So I'm going to go right about, let's go 100, right? And let's make it slightly smaller. And also I'll change this to ease just to give us a little bit more easier fall off. Okay, yeah, I guess that should do, but it shouldn't be white, so I'll go ahead and change it to a slightly yellowish color. And yeah, we can actually make it a little bit more sorry, not this. Yeah, we can bring it slightly over here, just to make sure that we are getting a little bit more of that effect, right? So yeah, your sun is pretty much ready. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and animate all of these textures. So I'm just gonna increase the detail a little bit more here, just to, yeah, yeah. So let's go ahead and animate our sun now. So sun's not still, right? There's a lot of things happening in it. So we're gonna go ahead and create that effect. So this noise texture that you see here, change the 3D output here from 3D to 4D. And as soon as you do that, you get this W option. Now I have got my timeline right below here. So I'm gonna go to frame 1, right click and insert keyframe at 0. And I'll go to frame 251 and let's just add a very slight variance in here, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and say 0.02 should be enough. And when we run it now, oh sorry, this is for okay, for this one we have to be slightly higher, right? So 0.02 won't do, so I'll go with let's say 0.5, and let's do right click, replace keyframe, and yep, we got that effect of our explosions moving now, right? Now we are also gonna go ahead and animate this Veranoid texture. The process is pretty much the same. We change the 3D to 4D and we come back, sorry, it's loading. Yeah, we come back to frame 1. We are gonna right click and do an insert keyframe, go to frame 251, and over here we're gonna keep it really low. And the reason for that is because the more the scale of a texture is, the more animated it's gonna get, right? Depending on what's the value you're putting in the W, right? So it's got a scale of 100. So I just want to make sure that we are not messing up with any like it just, I'm just making sure that it doesn't look ugly, right? So like for example, right now it's happening really slowly, which is amazing. But if I increase it to let's say a 0.1, now as you can see, sorry, I forgot to replace the keyframe. Okay, let's change it back to 0.1, place keyframe, and as you can see, it just looks really bad because a lot of things are happening a lot quickly, right? So that is something that we don't want. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as going ahead and creating this animation goes. Let me put it back to 0.02. Yeah, and if you want to know how to render it, just go to your render settings. I took a sample of about 100. That worked fine for me. You can also click on color here and change it to very high contrast, just to give it a little bit more contrasty look. And then go to the setting here, which is output properties. You can choose from the size that you want, like SDTV is 1080p. You can even go 4K as far as your resolution goes. But remember, the higher you go, the slower it's going to render. Here is your frame rate is what you can define. And right over here, you can either change it to FFmpeg or AVI. Choose the format that you want. Just make sure that you have MP4 selected if you're going for MP4, and just change this to either high quality or perceptually lossless. And then yeah, all you need to do is click on render and render animation and choose the location where you want to render it, and it will just give you the animation, right? So yeah, that's about it for this video. If you really like this, just make sure that you're dropping a like, and don't forget to subscribe, because there are a lot of other interesting videos on this channel and a lot more to come in the future. And if you want to see similar videos like that, you can just click on the top left corner of your screen right now, or you can just click on the bottom left if you want to learn more about modifiers. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out so far, and I'll see you guys in the next video.